The impossible rescue. The distress call nobody answered. Captain Jake Morrison was 3 drinks into his shift at the trading post when the distress signal came through. Most people ignored it. Distress calls from the Vortex Nebula were common, and rescue was considered suicide. The nebula's radiation scrambled navigation systems, its gravitational anomalies crushed ships like tin cans, and its electrical storms could fry circuits from 1,000 kilometers away. But Jake wasn't most people. "Computer, play that signal again," he said, setting down his glass. The automated voice crackled through the speakers. "This is transport vessel Meridian's Hope. Critical life support failure. 23 passengers, including children. Coordinates 447 Alpha 12. Please, anyone, we have children aboard." The bartender, a 6-armed Vexian named Kroll, shook his head. "Don't even think about it, human. The Vortex has killed more experienced pilots than you. The Galactic Rescue Service won't even attempt retrieval in that death trap." "How long do they have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 6 hours. But it doesn't matter. No one can navigate the Vortex. It's galactic law now." After the Threndel disaster, the Council declared the entire nebula off-limits during storm season. Jake stood up and tossed payment chips on the bar. "Then I guess I'm about to break galactic law. Breaking every rule." Jake's ship, the Reckless, wasn't impressive by galactic standards. It was a human-made cargo hauler, patched together with salvaged parts and held together by what other species called human stubbornness and mechanical impossibilities. But it had one advantage: Jake had modified every system himself. "Computer, plot a course into the Vortex. Coordinates 447 Alpha 12. Warning," his ship's AI responded. "Proposed course violates Galactic Safety Regulation 7734. Navigation through the Vortex Nebula during electrical storm season is prohibited. Attempting this rescue is illegal and carries mandatory life imprisonment." "Noted. Plot the course anyway." "Captain, this is inadvisable. Probability of survival is 0.003%. Jake grinned as he fired up the engines. "I like those odds. They're better than 0. As he approached the nebula's edge, his communication system exploded with warnings. The Galactic Rescue Service, the local system authority, even the Council itself, all screaming at him to turn back. "Human vessel Reckless, you are ordered to abort this rescue attempt immediately," a Threndel commander barked through the comm. "You will be arrested upon your return." "If I return," Jake replied cheerfully. "But those people have kids on board. Kids don't wait for committees to debate rescue procedures." He cut the communication and plunged into the nebula. The Vortex. The moment Jake entered the Vortex, every system on his ship went haywire. Navigation flickered between 12 different readings, all wrong. His shields fluctuated wildly. Even the artificial gravity stuttered, making him feel momentarily weightless. This was why no one entered the Vortex. This was why it was considered impossible. But Jake had spent 20 years as a transport pilot, flying routes that other species considered too dangerous or unprofitable. He'd learned to trust his instincts over his instruments, to feel his way through space rather than rely entirely on sensors. "Computer, switch to manual controls. I'm flying this one old school." "Captain, manual navigation in these conditions is impossible." "Yeah, I've heard. Add it to the list." Jake's hands gripped the control yoke as he guided the ship deeper into the nebula. Every few seconds, his shields sparked as they deflected debris. Gravitational waves tried to pull him off course. Electrical storms lit up the view screen like deadly fireworks. But Jake kept flying. When sensors told him to go left, he went right, trusting the way the ship felt under his hands. When instruments screamed warnings, he ignored them and followed his gut. This was what made humans different, he thought. Other species had better technology, longer lifespans, more advanced civilizations. But humans had something that couldn't be programmed into a computer: the ability to adapt, to improvise, to to keep going when logic said to quit. After 2 hours of impossible flying, his sensors finally locked onto the distress signal. "There you are," Jake muttered, adjusting his course. The Meridian's Hope appeared through the storm, tumbling helplessly in the nebula's currents. Its hull was scorched, its engines dead, and its life support was failing. Jake could see frost forming on the viewports. "Meridian's Hope, this is Captain Morrison of the Reckless. I'm here to get you out." The response was weak, barely audible through the interference. You came? Nobody comes into the vortex." "Well, I'm nobody's favorite person right now anyway. Prepare for emergency docking. This is going to be rough." The impossible maneuver. Docking with a tumbling ship in the middle of an electrical storm was something no sane pilot would attempt. The Meridian's Hope was spinning on 3 axes, caught in conflicting gravitational fields. Jake studied the pattern, watching the ship tumble. Other species would have used computers to calculate the exact moment to dock. But Jake's brain worked differently. He saw patterns, felt rhythms, understood motion in a way that was purely instinctive. "Computer, on my mark, match rotation exactly. No calculations, just do what I say when I say it." "Captain, this is extremely dangerous." "That's why they pay me the big money." "Which they don't, actually, but let's not focus on that right now." Jake waited, watching the tumbling ship, feeling the rhythm of its spin. His hands moved on the controls, making tiny adjustments. He wasn't thinking anymore. He was just reacting, trusting 20 years of experience and human instinct. Now. The Reckless lurched forward, matching the Meridian's Hope's rotation perfectly. Docking clamps engaged with a satisfying clunk. Jake had maybe 30 seconds before the nebula's forces tore them apart. "Emergency airlocks open. Everyone move, now." Through the docking tunnel, 23 beings scrambled aboard the Reckless. Humans, Vexians, Altarians, even a family of Zephyr with their delicate crystalline children. They poured into his cargo bay, terrified but alive. "Everyone in? Good. Computer, seal docks and get us out of here." Jake didn't wait for confirmation. He punched the engines and dove deeper into the storm, looking for a way out. The safe route he'd taken in was now blocked by new electrical storms. He'd have to improvise. For the next hour, Jake performed flying that would be studied in academies for years to come. He threaded his ship through gravitational anomalies that should have crushed them. He dodged debris fields that appeared with no warning. He even used an electrical storm's energy to boost his shields, a trick that was theoretically impossible but worked because Jake didn't know it couldn't. Finally, Reckless burst out of the nebula into clear space. Every warning light on the ship was flashing. Half his systems were damaged. But they were alive. The consequence. Waiting for him was a fleet of Galactic Authority ships. "Human vessel Reckless, you are under arrest for violation of Galactic Safety Regulation 7734. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake looked at the refugees in his cargo bay. Parents holding children. Families reunited. 23 lives that would have been lost if he'd followed the rules. "Copy that," Jake said. Powering down. As Authority officers boarded his ship, one of the rescued passengers, a Vexian mother, grabbed Jake's arm. "Why did you come? Why risk your life for strangers?" Jake shrugged. "Because someone had to. And humans are really bad at accepting can't as an answer." The trial. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in the Galactic Court, facing charges that carried a mandatory life sentence. The prosecution's case was simple. Jake had violated a clearly stated law designed to prevent exactly the kind of reckless behavior he'd engaged in. The law exists for a reason, the prosecutor argued. Hundreds have died attempting rescue in the Vortex Nebula. Captain Morrison endangered not only himself but the refugees he was supposedly saving. His actions, while well-intentioned, were illegal and dangerous. Jake's court-appointed defender, a Threndel lawyer named Vexera, stood to present his case. "Members of the court, I will not dispute the facts. My client did violate Regulation 7734. However, I submit that this case represents something more important than law. It represents the question of what laws should exist. The courtroom murmured. This was unusual. The regulation in question, Vexera continued, was created after the Threndel disaster, when my own people lost a rescue ship in the vortex. We decided that some lives could not be saved, that the risk was too great. We made it illegal to even try. She pulled up holographic displays showing the 23 refugees Jake had saved. Captain Morrison looked at that same law and asked a different question. Not is it legal, but is it right? He saw children dying and decided that some rules are worth breaking. The head judge, an ancient Altarian, leaned forward. Counselor, are you arguing that individuals should be free to ignore laws they disagree with? No, Your Honor. I'm arguing that humans see possibilities where others see only limitations. Every species in this court has contributed to galactic civilization. But humans bring something unique, the refusal to accept that anything is truly impossible. The verdict. The court deliberated for 2 days. During that time, something unexpected happened. The families Jake had rescued started a petition. It spread across the galactic network, gathering millions of signatures. Pardon the human who saved our children. Laws that prevent heroes are bad laws. Humanity shows us what courage looks like. When the court reconvened, the head judge spoke solemnly. Captain Morrison, you violated a clear and unambiguous law. Your actions were illegal, dangerous, and reckless. The judge paused. They were also brave, selfless, and successful. This court finds you guilty of all charges. Jake felt his heart sink. However, the judge continued, this court also recognizes that Galactic Safety Regulation 7734 is fundamentally flawed. A law that makes it illegal to save lives is a law that should not exist. Therefore, while we find you guilty under current law, we are immediately recommending that regulation be repealed and rewritten. The courtroom erupted in chaos. As for your sentence, the judge said, raising his voice over the noise, you are hereby sentenced to 6 months of community service, teaching advanced rescue techniques at the Galactic Flight Academy. Perhaps you can teach other species how to see past impossible. Jake couldn't help but grin. Your Honor, does this mean? It means you broke the law and proved the law was wrong. It means humans continue to confuse and amaze us. And it means, the judge allowed himself a small smile, that 23 beings owe their lives to your stubborn refusal to accept reality as it is presented. 6 months later. Jake stood in front of a classroom full of cadets from 20 different species. On the view screen behind him was footage of his rescue flight, studied frame by frame. The Vortex Nebula rescue is now considered possible, he began, because one human proved it could be done. But here's the thing, it was always possible. Other species just convinced themselves it wasn't. A young Threndel cadet raised her hand. But Captain Morrison, your survival probability was less than 1%. How did you justify taking that risk? Jake smiled. Because 1% is better than 0. And because humans have a saying, they told us it was impossible, so we did it on a Tuesday before lunch. We don't like being told what we can't do. He pulled up tactical displays showing the flight path. Now, let's talk about improvisation. See this moment here, where I used the electrical storm to boost my shields? That wasn't in any manual. I just tried it because I needed more power and there was all this energy around. That's human engineering. What if we just tried this crazy thing? The ripple effect. The Academy. Jake's community service turned into something unexpected. What started as punishment became the most sought-after course at the Galactic Flight Academy. Students from across the galaxy competed for spots in Morrison's Impossible Flight Theory class. Today we're going to talk about why your instruments are wrong, Jake announced to his latest class, earning confused looks from the cadets. A Vexian student raised 3 of her arms. Instructor Morrison, our instruments use quantum-level precision. How can they be wrong? Jake grinned. They're not wrong about what they measure. They're wrong about what matters. He pulled up a simulation of the vortex rescue. Watch this moment. My NAV computer says I should go left. The gravitational readings say left. Every sensor says left. But I went right. That makes no sense, a Threndel cadet protested. Exactly. It makes no sense if you only trust data. But I felt something was off. The ship was pulling slightly different than the sensors indicated. I trusted my gut over my instruments. But humans can't sense gravitational fluctuations, another student argued. Not consciously, Jake agreed. But our brains process thousands of tiny inputs we don't even notice. The slight vibration in the deck plates. The way the ship responds to controls. The pattern of stellar radiation on the view screen. Our subconscious puts it all together and gives us what we call instinct. He could see the cadets struggling with this concept. Most galactic species had evolved to trust technology over biological instinct. Their civilizations were built on logic and measurement. Let me show you something else, Jake said, switching to a different recording. This is Cadet Rylax's simulation attempt last week. The video showed a Threndel student attempting the vortex rescue in a simulator. The attempt failed spectacularly, with the simulated ship exploding in the first gravitational anomaly. Now watch what happens when Rylax stops thinking and starts feeling. The next video showed the same student, this time with her eyes closed, hands on the controls, relying purely on the tactile feedback from the ship. This time, she made it 30 seconds further before failing. That's progress, Jake said. Each time you try, you learn to trust your instincts a little more. To feel the ship instead of just flying it. The challenge. Word of Jake's teaching methods spread beyond the academy. Some praised his innovative approach. Others criticized him for teaching dangerous techniques that contradicted established safety protocols. The controversy came to a head when Grand Admiral Thexvor, a conservative Alterian military leader, challenged Jake publicly. Your methods are reckless, Thexvor declared in a broadcast that reached millions. You teach students to ignore safety protocols, to trust feelings over facts. This is not advancement. This is regression to primitive thinking. Jake responded with his own broadcast. Grand Admiral, with respect, your safety protocols didn't save those 23 people in the vortex. Your facts said rescue was impossible. My primitive thinking brought them home alive. One success does not prove a method. Thexvor shot back. I challenge you to demonstrate your techniques under controlled conditions. If you fail, you agree to stop teaching your dangerous improvisation methods. Jake accepted immediately. And if I succeed? Then I will personally enroll in your course and learn your human instinct. The challenge was set. Jake would attempt a rescue simulation designed by Thexvor himself, one that incorporated every known impossible scenario. The entire galaxy would watch. The ultimate test. The simulation arena was packed with spectators from across the galaxy. Holofeeds broadcast the event to billions of viewers. Jake sat in a simulation pod while Thexvor explained the scenario. Your mission: rescue a diplomatic vessel caught in a quantum storm near a collapsing star. Navigation is impossible. Shields will fail within minutes. Gravitational forces exceed any known ship's tolerance. This simulation has been attempted by our best pilots. The record survival time is 47 seconds. Jake cracked his knuckles. What's the objective? Just survive or actually complete the rescue? Complete the rescue, Thexvor said with a cold smile. If you can. Computer, start simulation. The virtual space around Jake exploded into chaos. Quantum fluctuations made his sensors show 12 different versions of reality simultaneously. The collapsing star's gravity well was already tearing at his shields. The diplomatic vessel tumbled helplessly in the maelstrom. Jake closed his eyes. What is he doing? Someone in the audience whispered. Trusting his instincts, Dexera, Jake's lawyer who had become a friend, replied with a smile. With his eyes closed, Jake let his hands move on the controls without thinking. He wasn't flying anymore. He was feeling. The gravitational waves had a rhythm. The quantum fluctuations had a pattern. His human brain, evolved to spot patterns in chaos, began to see possibilities that logic missed. He dove into the storm not toward safety, but deeper into danger. The audience gasped. Every calculation said this was suicide. But Jake had stopped calculating. He was improvising, adapting, reacting to each moment without trying to predict the next. When gravity pulled left, he used that pull instead of fighting it. When quantum fluctuations created false readings, he ignored his instruments entirely. 47 seconds passed. Jake was still alive. At 1 minute, he reached the diplomatic vessel. Impossible, Thexvor whispered. At 90 seconds, Jake had docked with the tumbling ship. At 2 minutes, he'd loaded the virtual refugees and was navigating back out. The simulation ended at 2 minutes and 38 seconds. Complete success. The arena erupted in chaos. Half the audience was cheering. The other half was arguing that what they'd seen was impossible. Jake climbed out of the simulation pod, grinning at Thexvor. So, Grand Admiral, when do you want to start classes? The new doctrine. Thexvor, to his credit, kept his word. The proud admiral enrolled in Jake's course, and his presence brought legitimacy to the humans' methods. But more importantly, it sparked a revolution in galactic thinking. The Galactic Fleet began incorporating human adaptability training into their standard curriculum. Scientists studied how human intuition worked, trying to understand the biological basis for pattern recognition in chaos. Engineers started designing ships with systems that could be overridden by pilot instinct. But the biggest change was philosophical. For thousands of years, galactic civilization had operated on a simple principle: measure, calculate, predict, execute. Humans introduced a new principle: adapt, improvise, feel, succeed. What you're really teaching, Dexter said to Jake one evening over drinks, isn't flying techniques. It's hope. Hope? Jake raised an eyebrow. Think about it. For millennia, we've been told that some things are impossible. Some problems can't be solved. Some people can't be saved. We created laws and regulations to manage those limitations. She gestured at the academy around them. Then humans show up and start breaking those limitations. You don't prove things are possible through calculation. You prove them through doing. Jake nodded slowly. We just refuse to accept can't as a final answer. Exactly. And that refusal is changing everything. 1 year later. The Galactic Council passed the Morrison Doctrine, officially recognizing adaptive improvisation as a valid rescue methodology. The Vortex Nebula was reopened to trained rescue pilots. Dozens of previously impossible rescues were successfully completed. But Jake wasn't thinking about any of that as he prepared his ship for departure. His community service was complete. He was free to return to his simple life as a cargo hauler. Leaving? Thexvor asked, finding Jake in the hangar. Yeah, I'm not really the teacher type. Too much standing around talking. I like actually flying. The Admiral smiled. You taught an entire galaxy to think differently. That's worth more than you know. Maybe. But right now, I've got a cargo delivery to Proxima Station, and I'm already 3 days late. As Jake walked toward his ship, his communicator beeped. Another distress call. This time from the crystal fields, another impossible zone that was considered too dangerous for rescue. Jake looked at the message, then at his ship. He should ignore it. He'd done his part. Let someone else be the hero. But that wasn't how humans worked. Computer, Jake said with a grin, cancel the cargo run. Plot a course to the crystal fields. Looks like someone needs help. Captain, the crystal fields are classified as impossible to navigate. Jake laughed as he fired up his engines. Yeah, that's what they said about the vortex too. The legacy. Years passed. Jake continued flying, continued rescuing, continued doing the impossible. But he wasn't alone anymore. His students graduated and spread across the galaxy, carrying human adaptability with them. A Vexian pilot successfully navigated the temporal rift using pure instinct. A Threndel engineer improvised a solution to a starbase reactor failure that shouldn't have been possible. An Altarian diplomat solved a decade-old political crisis by breaking every rule of protocol and just talking to people like people. Everywhere, beings who had learned from Jake were pushing boundaries, questioning limitations, and proving that impossible was just a challenge waiting to be overcome. One day, Jake received a message from the Galactic Council. They wanted to award him their highest honor for services to galactic civilization. What service? Jake asked Vexera when she brought him the news. I just rescue people and teach flying. You did more than that, she replied. You showed us that laws aren't sacred. Technology isn't infallible. Calculations aren't destiny. You reminded us that sometimes the best solution is the one that shouldn't work but does anyway. Jake attended the ceremony, uncomfortable in formal clothes, surrounded by dignitaries from 100 worlds. When asked to give a speech, he kept it simple. I'm not special, he said. I'm just human. And humans have one defining characteristic: we're really, really bad at accepting limitations. When someone tells us something is impossible, we hear that as nobody's figured it out yet. When we see a rule that doesn't make sense, we question it. When we find a problem that seems unsolvable, we try anyway. He looked out at the diverse audience. Every species here has gifts humans don't have. You're stronger, smarter, longer-lived. You built civilizations before we even existed. But maybe, just maybe, humans bring something you needed, the reminder that rules are made by people and can be changed by people. That impossible is just difficult plus fear. That sometimes the right thing to do is break the law, trust your gut, and fly straight into the storm. The audience erupted in applause. But Jake was already thinking about his next cargo run, his next rescue, his next impossible challenge. Because that's what humans did. They kept flying, kept pushing, kept refusing to accept the galaxy as it was, and kept working to make it what it could be. And somehow, impossibly, it worked.